Until 1947, McGill's men's teams went by a variety of names. Their official names remained senior football, or rugby, intermediate hockey, etc., but reporters both on and off campus referred to teams by various nicknames. The Red and Whites, the Red Team, and specific teams associated with hockey or football, such as McGill's Red Pucksters or basketball's Red Cagers, or for men's water polo, the Mermen. The most common name for McGill intercollegiate rugby team, i.e. football, before 1928 was the Shagmen, a name most people would agree would be unsuitable with a male football team in the 21st century, but coined in reference to McGill's most famous football coach, Frank Shags Shaughnessy. When Shaughnessy left in 1927 for a couple seasons, Shagman was dropped and Redmen took over as the most popular team nickname. The red part most certainly came from McGill school colors, but it had traction and stuck because Redmen fit into existing North American traditions of giving teams indigenous names. Moreover, Redmen was a word in popular use. If you create an engram of words appearing in Google's digitized books, you see that the word entered popular usage in the 1890s and had virtually disappeared by 2000. All teams had school colors, but Greenmen, Goldmen, or Bluemen did not become team names. Other college sports teams would also use the name Redmen. Although Redmen was the most common name in the 1930s, other names continued to be used. It did not have a monopoly, nor was it linked explicitly to anything indigenous. This dramatically changed in the 1940s. In 1947, as part of post-war campus reconstruction, McGill hired former NFL player American Vic Obeck as football coach and later director of athletics. Obeck brought with him an American style that linked football and spectacle. Football crowds of 15,000 became the norm. Obeck raised the profile of male athletics by branding the men's teams. Redmen became the adopted name for the intercollegiate teams, and intermediate and junior teams became Indians or Braves. McGill got a marching band, the Redmen Band. The Redmen Room cafeteria in the gym, and Hail to the Redmen replaced Old McGill as the football song. By 1952, a cartoon character of an indigenous man, very much in keeping with the portrayal of indigenous people in popular culture, was pictured with a football under his arms, braids flying behind, and wearing the McGill team uniform. One of the many horrible aspects of this depiction was that until 1961, no Indigenous person in Canada could wear the McGill uniform without losing his status. The Indian Act dictated automatic loss of status with graduation from university. This legal hurdle, compounded with the ongoing presence of residential schools, racism, and poverty, meant that with rare exception, Indigenous students did not attend universities. During the 1950s, the only visible Indigenous presence on campus was the image on the marching band drum, associated Winter Carnival ice sculptures, racist satires, and in the play on John Diefenbaker's nickname, Dief the Chief, in the 1958 Red and White Review. The indigenous branding of the men's teams after 1947 set loose a new explicitly racist language on campus, as writers attempted to be smart in their sports reporting. The Redmen name remained unofficial. The Students' Athletic Council rarely used it before the mid-60s, when it went full on with Redmen Week, Miss McGill Redmen, and Miss Redmen Hockey. In 1960, the McGill Athletic Board began referring to Redmen in scare quotes, but these soon disappeared. 1961 happens to be the first time any of the McGill women's teams were referred to as the Squaws and later Super Squaws, a practice that only completely disappeared in the fall 1976. At the moment the Indian Act changed, the informal nickname seems to have been accepted everywhere. Some students expressed displeasure with the branding direction as early as 1953. Members of the Student Athletic Council protested the use of an Indian on advertisements, concerned that the image might become associated with the university. In turn, Vic Obeck pointed out that Redmen could be more easily illustrated by an Indian than by a martlet. A more appropriate design was to be considered and the matter tabled. In 1971, after a period of flourishing Indigenous activism on campus, David Diamond, a member of the McGill Intertribal Council of Native Students, wrote to the Daily, protesting a poster in the Student Union building promoting the women's hockey team as squaws on the warpath. Diamond explained that the word was derogatory, paternalistic, and racist, and asked how many Indian women were on the team. How many at McGill? The matter was taken up again in the early 90s by students involved in the Native Awareness Committee, such as Ned Blackhawk and Brian Rice. These students protested both the Redmen name and the stylized logo of an Indigenous man introduced on football helmets in 1980. In 1992, Senate asked the athletic board to look into the matter. Its response can only be described as puzzling, as it claimed the name had no connection in its usage with Native people of Canada. The helmet logo was dismissed as relatively recent and would be immediately discontinued and replaced with a new image, ideally highlighting the essentially Celtic origin of the Redmen's name in McGill usage. I am still looking for anything that ever connected Redmen to things Scottish. Instead, war cries, allusions to tomahawks, scalping, rely on references to the violence of colonialism. Paternalistic and derogatory terms for Indigenous women coincided with racist depictions of Indigenous people in cartoons, in ice, and in theater. The adoption of the Redmen name was rooted in the McGill colors, but it was just as strongly grounded in the history of colonialism and racism in Canada, Quebec, Montreal, and McGill. It's a name that carried tremendous pride among athletes, but it's also been a cause of great hurt and exclusion for others. If we are to move forward in the context of mutual respect called for by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and specifically hope to embed indigeneity into life and activities of the university, this relic of the 20th century has got to go.